We are trapped in a vicious cycle of economic, intellectual, social, and political death. Inferior jobs, inferior housing, inferior education, which in turn again leads to inferior jobs. We spend a lifetime in this vicious circle, or in this vicious cycle going in circles, giving birth to children who see no hope or future but to follow in our miserable footsteps. So we thank God for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We who are Muslims saw no way out until we accepted the religion of Islam and the spiritual guidance of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We saw no solution to our problems. We saw no real leader among our people. But today the whole world is talking about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the divine solution he received from the God of our forefathers. Not your God, but from the God of our forefathers. Not a temporary solution which will benefit only the hand-picked upper-class Negroes, but a solution divinely designed to solve the plight of the black masses in this country permanently and forever. The government does not want our people to listen and understand the solution that God has given the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The government is against Mr. Muhammad because the government is against our God. In order to trick our people away from God's true solution, the government is trying to deceive our people with a false solution, a phony solution, a deceitful solution called token integration. I may add, whenever you get on the bus or the subway or the streetcar and you have to use a token, that token is not the real thing, but it is the substitute for the real thing. And wherever you have a token, you have a substitute. And wherever you have token integration, you don't have anything but a substitute for integration, and there's no real integration anywhere in North America, north, south, east, or west, not even in San Francisco, Oakland, or Berkeley. Has the government's efforts to bribe our people with token integration made our plight better, or has it made it worse? When you try to integrate the white community in search of better housing, the whites there fled to the suburbs. And the community that you thought would be integrated soon deteriorated into another all-black slum. What happened to the liberal whites? Why did they flee? We thought that they were supposed to be our friends. And why did the neighborhood deteriorate only after our people moved in? It is the tricky real estate agents posing as white liberal friends who encourage our people to force their way into white communities. And then they themselves sell these integrated houses at such high prices that our people again are forced to take in roomers to offset the high house notes. This creates in the new area the same overcrowded conditions, and the new community soon deteriorates into the same slum conditions from which we thought we had escaped. The only one who has benefited is the white real estate agent who poses as our friend, as a liberal, and who sells us the house in a community destined by his own greedy schemes to become nothing but a high-priced slum area. Today our people can see that integrated housing has not solved our problem. At best, it was only a temporary solution, one in which only the wealthy, hand-picked Negroes found temporary benefit. After the 1954 Supreme Court desegregation decision, the same thing happened when our people tried to integrate the schools. All the white students disappeared into the suburbs. Now the caliber of what our people thought was to be an integrated school has fallen to the same level of the slum school from which we thought we had escaped. Just as efforts to integrate housing failed miserably, efforts to integrate schools have been an even more miserable failure. Having failed to get integrated housing and failed to get integrated schools, now the Negro leaders are demanding integrated jobs. That is, they are demanding a certain quota or percentage of white people's jobs. First, the Negro leadership demanded the white man's house, and the whites vacated their rundown houses for us and built new homes for themselves out in the suburbs. Then the Negro leader demanded seats for our children in the white man's schools. The whites evacuated the schools as our children moved in, and they built modern schools for themselves in the suburbs. But now the Negro leadership is demanding the white man's job. Can the whites vacate their jobs like they did their homes and their schools and move to the suburbs and create more jobs? No, not without violence and bloodshed. The same white liberals who used to praise our people for their patient, nonviolent approach have now become openly impatient and violent themselves in defense of their own jobs, not only in the South, but also in the North, even here in the Bay Area. For 33 years, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has been warning us that the time would come when the white man would not have enough jobs for himself, much less enough jobs for our people. So the present demand of our people for more of the white man's jobs must lead to violence and bloodshed. It may even lead to a race war, a bloody race war. And it is the government itself that is now pressing the people of this country into a racial bloodbath. But the white man is misjudging the times, and he's underestimating the American so-called Negro, because we're living in a new day. Our people are now a new people. That old Uncle Tom type Negro is dead. Our people have no more fear of anyone, no more fear of anything. We are not afraid to go to jail. We are not afraid to give our very life itself. And we're not afraid to take the lives of those who try to take our lives. We believe in a fair exchange. We believe in a fair exchange, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a head for a head, and a life for a life. If this is the price of freedom, we won't hesitate to pay the price. By trying to oppose the divine solution that God has given to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the American government will actually provoke another civil war. That is, this government, and especially that present administration in Washington, D.C., will provoke a civil war among whites by trying to force them to give up their jobs and homes and schools to our people, and our people will provoke a race war by trying to take the white man's jobs and his schools and his home away from him. This racial dilemma poses a serious problem for white America. Civil war between whites on the one hand, a race war between the whites and their 20 million ex-slaves on the other hand. And the entire dark world is watching, waiting to see what the American government will do to solve this problem once and for all. We must have a permanent solution. A temporary solution won't do. Tokenism will no longer suffice. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has the only permanent solution. 20 million ex-slaves must be permanently separated from our former slave master and placed on some land that we can call our own. Then we can create our own jobs, control our own economy, solve our own problems, instead of waiting on the American white man to solve our problems for us. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that on our own land we can set up farms, factories, businesses. We can establish our own government and become an independent nation. And once we become separated from the jurisdiction of this white nation, we can then enter into trade and commerce for ourselves with other independent nations. This is the only solution. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that in our own land, we can establish our own agricultural system. We can grow food to feed our own people. We can raise cattle and use the hide, the leather, and the wool to clothe our people. We can dig the clay from the earth and make bricks to build homes for our people. We can turn the trees into lumber and furnish the homes for our own people. He says that we can dig the natural resources from the earth once we are in our own land. Land is the basis of all economic security. Land is essential to freedom, justice, and equality. Land is essential to true independence. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says we must be separated from the American white man, return to our own land where we can live among our own people. This is the only true solution. But just as the biblical government of Egypt under Pharaoh was against Moses because Moses had been directed by God to separate the Hebrew slaves from Pharaoh and lead them out of the house of bondage to a land of their own, today this modern house of bondage, under the authority of the American government, opposes this modern Moses, opposes the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's efforts to separate our people who have been made slaves here in this country and lead us to a land of our own. The government opposes the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's efforts to wake us up, clean us up, and stand us on our own feet so we can follow him out of this house of bondage to our own land where we can live among our own people. Just as the government of biblical Egypt was against the God of the Hebrew slaves, today the American government is against the God of her Negro slaves, the God of our forefathers. And just as that Pharaoh tried to trick the Hebrew slaves into rejecting the offers of salvation from their God by deceiving them with false promises through hired magicians and carefully staged demonstrations like the recent ridiculous March on Washington, today this government is paying certain elements of the Negro leadership to deceive our people into thinking that we're going to get accepted soon into the mainstream of American life. The government is deceiving our people with false promises so we won't want to return to our own land and people. The government is saying, stay here. Don't listen to this Muhammad. We'll desegregate the lunch counters and the theaters and the parks and the toilets, meaning this public accommodation things where you can sit on a toilet with a white person or in a toilet with a white person. We'll give you more civil rights bills. We won't give you civil rights, but we'll give you civil rights bills. The government promises our people this only to keep you from listening to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and to stop us from waking up. They know that if we listen to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad long enough, we will begin to do our own thinking. He'll make us see, hear, think, and able to speak for ourselves. Whenever you become fed up in this country with the white man's brutality and you get set to take matters in your own hands in order to defend yourself and your people, the same government, and again I repeat, especially that Catholic administration in Washington, D.C., tries to pacify our people with deceitful promises of tricky civil rights legislation that is never designed to be a true solution to our problem. Civil rights legislation will never solve our problems. The white liberals are nothing but political hypocrites who use our people as political footballs only to get bills passed that will increase their own power. The present proposed civil rights legislation will give the present administration dictatorial powers and make America a legal police state, but still won't solve the race problem. The present administration is only using civil rights as a political football to gain more legislation and power for itself. Our people are being used as pawns in the game of power politics by political hypocrites. They don't want our people to listen to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad because they know he will make us see them as they really are. So I say in my conclusion, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's message and solution is simple. He says, since we are not wanted in this country, let's pack our bags and go back home to our own people, to our own land. The propaganda of the American government is skillfully designed to make our people think that our people back home don't want us. Government propagandists tell us constantly, Africa is a jungle. Africans are savage and backward. They have no modern conveniences, and you're too much like us white folks. How could you live comfortably back there? This propaganda is government strategy against the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, realizing that his mission is to teach our people the truth about our own kind, clean us up, and then return us to our own land and unite us with our own people. The American government turns us against our own kind in order to keep us from making a mass exodus out of this country where we can live at home among our own people. Therefore, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says American propaganda is designed to make us think that no matter how much hell we catch here, we're still better off in America than we'd be anywhere else. They want us to think we have no place else to go. And many of our so-called intellectuals who pose as our leaders and spokesmen actually believe that we have no place else to go. So their solution to our problem is that we stay here and continue to catch hell from the American white man. But the only permanent solution is complete separation or some land of our own, in a country of our own. All other courses will lead to violence and bloodshed, It will lead to the destruction of America, and it will also lead to the destruction of our people who fall for it. So his message is, flee for your lives and save yourself, and I thank you.
When you say force yourselves upon others, upon the white community, how exactly do you mean that?
Well, any form of integration, forced integration, any effort to force integration upon whites is actually hypocritical. It is a form of hypocrisy involved. If a white man puts his arm around me voluntarily, that's brotherhood. But if you hold a gun on him and make him embrace me and pretend to be friendly or brotherly toward me, then that's not brotherhood, that's hypocrisy. And what America is trying to do is pass laws to force whites to pretend that they want Negroes into their schools or in their places of employment. Well, this is hypocrisy, and this makes a worse relationship between black and white, rather than if this could be brought about on a voluntary basis. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that what should happen is the black man himself should learn how to develop himself in the same sense that the white man has developed himself. Then they can both come together and recognize each other as equals.
Well, how can the black man develop himself as a separate society?
Well, it's easy. He's separate already. The fact that you have Harlem, the fact that you have the Negro ghetto and the so-called Negro slum, he's already separate. The fact that he's a second-class citizen is a political separation. The fact that he's the last hired and the first fired is an economic separation. Only in this form of separation, the black man is exploited. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that we should be separate, all right. But in this separate state or separate existence, the black man should be given the opportunity and the incentive to do for himself what the white man has done for himself. If you have an all-white neighborhood, you don't call it a segregated neighborhood, but you call an all-black neighborhood a segregated neighborhood. And why? Because the segregated neighborhood is the one that's controlled from the outside by others. But a separate neighborhood is a neighborhood that is independent, it's equal, it can stand on its own 2 feet, such as the white neighborhood. It's an independent, free neighborhood, free community. They're not trying to force themselves upon anyone, socially or otherwise. But the Negro neighborhood, which is inferior, is begging for a chance to integrate itself into that which is superior, which is not going to happen. It's going to cause trouble.
Well, in other words, then you think the Negro has first to raise himself to a status of equality with the white community.
Yes.
Now, what happens, assuming that he can do that? Would you then be in favor of integration, let's say, in the schools or any place else?
When you are equal with another person, the problem of integration doesn't even arise. It doesn't come up. The Chinese in this country aren't asking for integration. The Japanese aren't asking for integration. The only minority in America that's asking for integration is the so-called Negro, primarily because he is inferior, not inherently inferior, but he's economically, socially, politically inferior, and this exists because he has never tried to stand on his own 2 feet and do something for himself. He has filled the role of a beggar.
Well, how can a minority group in this country, so-called, stand on its own 2 feet?
Well, I can give you this example by explaining the difference between segregation and separation. Segregation is that which is forced upon an inferior by a superior. Separation is done voluntarily by 2 equals. If I have children and they live in my house, I care for them, they're dependent upon me, and their dependence upon me puts me in a position to regulate their lives, control their lives, tell them where to go, where they can't go. That's a form of segregation. But when those children become of age and they think they're equal with me, they leave my home. And when they leave my home and begin to set up a home for themselves, provide clothing, food, and shelter for themselves, that makes them independent of me. It puts them out of my jurisdiction. The fact that they can do for themselves that which I have done for myself makes me have to recognize that they are equals with me. And now, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that the black man in America, for the past 400 years, has been like a boy in the white man's house, begging the white man for a job, for food, clothing, and shelter. And then after the white man provides him with all of these things, he turns around and has the nerve to get angry at the white man when the white man tries to control his life.
But how, from a practical point of view, can the Negro be self-sufficient?
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, number one, he must have a knowledge of himself. And this gives him confidence in himself. He has been brainwashed by the educational system that exists here in America to the point where he feels he was a savage in the jungle when he was before he was brought here, and this destroys his morale. So the number one thing that has to be done, he has to be retaught, he has to be re-educated and made to know that he's a man like anyone else, and then he can stand on his own 2 feet like others have done. I might add, the whites who came here only, say 50 years ago as immigrants, have come into this country. They have set up businesses. They've developed these businesses into an industry. Some of them came here as poor immigrants, uneducated, and yet today they're economically independent. Now, the black man here was so-called free by Lincoln 100 years ago. The black man in America has a purchasing power of $20 billion. Now, and he's educated. If the white man can come here uneducated and as an immigrant, and within 10 or 15 years set up an industry that provides job opportunities and educational opportunities for black people, then if the black man, the black leadership, who has access to all of this money and has all of these degrees today, can't use his talent and his know-how to set up business opportunities, job opportunities, housing opportunities for the black people, the same as the white leaders have done for white people, then these black leaders need to get off the boat. They're not leading our people toward any kind of independence, but they're using their positions and their education and their talent to exploit our people worse than the slave master did during slavery.
Are you advocating a state within a state for the Negro community?
Not a state within a state. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is saying that the black man, since the white man, has found it impossible to bring about integration other than on a token basis, and which proves that the two of us, the ex-slave and the master, can't live in the same house as equals. And at the same time, then what Mr. Muhammad says is they should take their navy and their merchant fleet and ship us back where they got us. And that's not deportation, that's returning stolen property to its proper owner. Now, since the government doesn't want to do that, then they have already proven that they can't bring about peaceful relations on an integrated basis in this country, give us some separate territory in this country where our people can go and do something for ourselves, and provide us with everything that we need to keep that new territory going until we are self-sufficient. And this should not be too hard to understand that the government should do it, because if this government can send $20 billion to Latin America, to some peasants who have never fought for this country or worked for this country, and is sending hundreds of millions of dollars to Africa and Asia to try and buy friendship of people who will never be friendly toward them, then they should be even more quick to spend whatever amount of money is necessary to get inside of their house straight before it's too late. So we don't think that we're begging for anything. We think we're demanding what is ours by right. And all we're asking for is an opportunity to do something for ourselves rather than to sit around as a beggar, begging for jobs and begging for education for someone else for the rest of our lives.
Well, many sociologists say that the reason why the Negro in the United States is, quote, inferior, unquote, if you want to use that expression, is because of what the white man has done with segregation. And they therefore see the answer to the dilemma to be in doing away with segregation and everything that this implies. Now, apparently your philosophy is the complete antithesis of this particular idea.
Well, I don't know whether you would call it the antithesis. We're primarily interested in solving the problem of 20 million black people. And if integration is going to solve the problem tomorrow, then let's integrate. But since the Supreme Court issued its desegregation decision 7 years ago, and you only have about 6 or 7% integration now on an educational level, that means that the black man trying to use integration as a means of solving his problem will be another 100 years just getting integration on an educational level. And what the white man in America needs to realize is there's a new thinking among black people today which makes them not willing to sit around and wait for 5 years to get this problem solved, much less 100 years. And since integration is so slow, and the white man knows that the problem must be solved, the only thing that he can do tomorrow is separate, because we're already separated.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Malcolm, what do you think of Martin Luther King?
I think that any black man who teaches black people to turn the other cheek and suffer peacefully after they've been turning the cheek and suffering peacefully for 400 years in a land of bondage under the most cruel, inhuman, and wicked slave master that any people have ever been under. He is doing those people an injustice, and he's a traitor to his own people. Nobody should teach the black man in America to turn the other cheek unless someone is teaching the white man in America to turn the other cheek. And no one should advocate any peaceful suffering to black people unless the white man is going to practice the same kind of peaceful suffering. What Martin Luther King is doing is disarming the black people of America of their God-given right and of their natural right. And the law of nature gives a man a right to defend himself when he's attacked. And God's law itself gives a man the right to defend himself when he's attacked. So peaceful suffering and passive resistance and all of that stuff is all right maybe in India somewhere, where the people in India outnumbered the whites about 1,000,000 to 1. But here in America, when you tell, that's like an elephant sitting down on a mouse in India with Gandhi. But in America, you have the mouse now trying to sit down on the elephant, thinking that he's going somewhere, and it's absurd.
Don't you think that perhaps the idea of nonviolent resistance is a tactic which disarms the white community as much, if not more, than it does the Negro?
No, you don't disarm any white community with any by confining yourself to any particular method. If you want freedom, then you should get freedom, like Patrick Henry said, by whatever method is necessary. If you are not willing to pay the price for freedom, you don't deserve freedom.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Go on.
No, that's all right.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that actually the basis of distinction here is a distinction of goals. Dr. King's goals are quite different from yours. He believes in integration, complete integration of society. Is that correct?
Well, that's where Dr. King is mixed up. His goal should be the solution of the problem of the black man in America. Now, not integration. Integration is the method toward obtaining that goal. And what the Negro leader has done is gotten himself wrapped up in the method and has forgotten what the goal is. The goal is the dignity of the black man in America. He wants respect as a human being. He wants recognition as a human being. Now, if integration will get him that, all right. If segregation will get him that, all right. If separation will get him that, all right. But after he gets integration and he still doesn't have this dignity and this recognition as a human being, then his problem is still not solved.
Well, isn't this exactly what Dr. King is looking towards, and that is the day when the Negro will be treated with dignity? Wasn't this, after all, the result of the Montgomery bus boycott?
No, because I don't think you can, having an opportunity to ride either on the front or the back or in the middle of someone else's bus doesn't dignify you. When you have your own bus, then you have dignity. When you have your own school, you have dignity. When you have your own country, you have dignity. When you have something of your own, you have dignity. But whenever you are begging for a chance to participate in that which belongs to someone else, or use that which belongs to someone else on an equal basis with the owner, that's not dignity, that's ignorance. If I may add, for instance, King and these others will say that they are fighting for the Negro to have equal job opportunities. How can people, a group of people such as our people, who own no factories, have equal job opportunities competing against a race that owns the factories? The only way the two can have equal job opportunities is if black people have factories as well as white people have factories. And then we can employ whites or we can employ blacks, just like they can employ whites or they can employ blacks. But as long as the factories are in the hands of the whites, the housing is in the hands of the whites, the school system is in the hands of the whites, you have a situation where the blacks are constantly begging the whites, can they use this or can they use that? That's not any kind of equality of opportunity, nor does it lend toward one's dignity.
Well, would you not admit that the situation in the South today for the Negro is better than it was, let's say, 10 years ago?
No, because 10 years ago, the black man knew what his condition was, and today, because of the world revolution that's taking place all over this earth, the black man would be fighting for what he knows is his by right. But the movement on the part of King and the others has done nothing but slow down the militancy that is inherent in the nature of the black man. All over this world, people are standing up for freedom. In this country, these Negro leaders have Negroes sitting down, thinking that there's dignity towards sitting in. I might add, ma'am, how in the world can you say, or can anyone say, that it will dignify the American Negro to beg in or wade in or plead in when the people in Hungary didn't beg in? They were freedom fighters, and they fought for their freedom, and they came to this country, and they were Hungarians, they were communists from a communist country, and right now those Hungarian freedom fighters can get jobs that student sit-ins can't get. They can go and sleep and live in hotels that Martin Luther King himself can't live in. So, and they are recognized and respected because they are fighters, not because they're sit-inners or freedom writers.
Well, would you advise the Negro in the South then to take up arms and get control of the factories this way?
No. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us the religion of Islam, which is a religion of peace. And he says that the way to solve this problem is for the white man to give us some territory of our own. And then our people, we have technical know-how, we have agricultural know-how, we have been working for the white man in his business. In every phase of his government, we work. And instead of working for him and helping him hold up a government that continues to suppress us socially and exploit us economically and oppress us politically, let us go into our own territory and use our own talents to uplift ourselves by our own bootstraps. And then he will recognize us for what we are.
Yes, but suppose you don't get this territory, which seems quite likely. Then what are you going to do? How are you going to accomplish your goals?
No, that's not our problem. That's America's problem. If the average American knew the trouble that Uncle Sam is in all over this earth, they could see that we're closer toward getting a separate territory in this country than the integrationists are toward getting integration. You have a race problem that must be solved, or else you will alienate every non-white person on this earth within the next few years or within the next few months. Uncle Sam right now is forcing integration only because he's trying to impress the people abroad that he's morally qualified to be the leader of the world. And if he can't do this, then it will alienate them. And all of the hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars that he has sent abroad trying to buy the friendship of the dark world will go right down the drain. He's not sending $20 billion to South America because he loves those people down there. He's sending it to them because he needs their friendship. He needs their allegiance. And why should he send $20 billion down there, which is going to go down the drain every time you have a racial incident in this country? Solve the race problem here. And once you solve the race problem here, you don't have to send these billions of dollars abroad.
Mr. Malcolm, how many adherents does your movement have about?
I've never heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad say how many there are, but I think as an intelligent person, you would agree that when you are teaching among oppressed people that they should be relieved of their oppression, not 100 years or 10 years from now, but right now, you're going to find your talk is going to fall upon sympathetic ears.
Then you feel that you have many more supporters than, let's say, figures that once were printed in the New York Times would indicate.
The main part of the tree is the root, and the root is always beneath the ground. It never is brought out into the light.
Would you say then that the average Negro, particularly in the South, who we are told follows and believes in Dr. King's philosophy, really does not believe in this philosophy, at least deep down in his heart, and would be just as willing to follow you?
Well, all you have to do is go back to slavery days, and there were two types of slave, the house slave and the field slave. The house slave was the one who believed in the master, who had confidence in the master, and usually was very friendly with the master. And usually he was also used by the master to try and keep the other slaves pacified. And the other slaves in the field never let that house slave know what they were really thinking. If the house slave said, well, one of these days all of us will live in the plantation, they said, uh-huh. They went along with him. But if you came up to them and said, let's go, they would be gone just like that. And in America, you have the same situation now. You have the vast masses who are still slaves. Then you have the upper class Negroes who are the modern day Uncle Toms or the 20th century Uncle Tom. They don't wear a handkerchief anymore. They wear top hats. They're called doctor. They're called reverend. But they play the same role today that Uncle Tom played on the plantation.
Are you likening Dr. King to the house slave of slavery days?
If you read the story of slavery and see the part that the Uncle Tom played in the plantation, and then you see how the white man today has changed his tactics, but he still occupies the same position. In that same context, you find Uncle Tom. He has changed his tactics, but he still occupies the same position. His job is to pacify the slave, keep them willing to suffer peacefully, keep them willing to love their enemy, and to pray for those who use them despitefully. That's the same thing that Uncle Tom did on the plantation before Lincoln issued the so-called Emancipation Proclamation.
And do you think that's what King is doing today?
Well, if he fills that role, he fills that role. I don't know. I have no thinking on the matter. But he's teaching the black people to suffer peacefully, patiently, until the white man makes up his mind that you're a human being the same as he. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is teaching the black man you're a human being right now. All you have to do is dignify yourself. You don't have to wait for any white man to recognize you. Recognize yourself. Love each other. Practice harmony and brotherhood among your own kind. Do something for yourself, and then you'll be recognized by the entire world as a man who has done for himself what others have done for themselves.
Do you think that Dr. King is sincere in what he's saying and doing, or do you think perhaps that he's being rather opportunistic in his own way, but his way just happens to be wrong?
He's wrong, and I'm inclined to believe that most Negro leaders, professional Negroes, are professional Negroes. Being a Negro is their profession, and being a leader is their profession. And usually they say exactly what the white man wants to hear them say. They never let the white man know exactly what black people are thinking, period. And most of them whose existence or whose position of leadership depends upon the subsidy or crumbs, the crumbs from the white man's table, will only say what that white man wants to hear. When they get behind the door, they talk a different language. And I think that they do the white man more harm and do America more harm than the Muslims do, who let the white man know exactly what we think and what black people think in general.
Is there any leadership in the Negro community outside that of the black Muslim movement which you would approve of?
Whoever is standing up, telling the white man that his position is unjust and that the black people should not have to wait for any Supreme Court, Congress, or Senate to legislate, or even the president to issue any kind of a proclamation to better the condition of our people. If a Negro leader is standing up making that point clear, then he's all right with us. But as long as he's making the white man think that our people are satisfied to sit in his house and wait for him to correct these conditions, he is misrepresenting the thinking of the black masses, and he's doing the white man a disservice because he's making the white man be more complacent than he would be if he knew the dangerous situation that's building up right inside his own house. A cat that's inside of your house that is angry and dissatisfied and hostile is more dangerous to you than a full-grown lion is on the outside.
Well, you know, getting back to the philosophical point you made there about acceptance, this is one of the arguments that the white community down south gives to the Negroes who claim that they want certain rights, that it's fine to go to schools and to even sit at lunch counters together. But this question of social equality and social acceptance, actually, is something else again. The whites don't want it, and you don't want it. Now, where's the difference? Actually, aren't you taking their position in reverse?
Don't say the whites down south. Whites up north. There's no difference between whites in the south and whites in the north, only the whites in the south aren't hypocritical about it. You don't find any more there is just as much social intermixing in the south as between the races as there is in the north. Only in the south they let you know where they stand, and in the north they take a hypocritical approach or attitude or reaction. And I think, again, that does the whole problem a disservice. It's not a case of our wanting to mix socially with whites. And and the whites are right in the South when they say that getting a cup of coffee in a restaurant is all right. But it's not all right for the black man. What does a black man look like begging for a cup of coffee in a white restaurant and doesn't have a job to back up to pay for it when he does get the coffee? It's putting the cart before the horse. Instead of the Negro leaders having the black man begging for a chance to dine in white restaurants, the Negro leader should be showing the black man how to do something to strengthen his own economy, to give himself an independent economy, or to provide job opportunities for himself. Not begging for a cup of coffee in a white man's restaurant.
Well, you take a situation like that which exists in Atlanta. Now, here it would seem to me would be an ideal illustration of your point. In Atlanta, you have some of the wealthiest Negroes in the United States. They own insurance companies, banks, beautiful homes. They have their own restaurants, nightclubs. They have some of the best schools that are all Negro schools. Yet do you really think that this makes them any better off? Do you think that this gives them any more dignity? I mean, isn't this the goal towards which you're reaching?
Yes, this is the goal in part, but not only do we want our own community, we want our own land, period. The same as the Jews were never satisfied until they had Israel. They wanted a country that they could point toward and a flag that they could point toward. This doesn't mean that they even went to Israel, but this gave them prestige. It gave them dignity. It gave them something to back them up. And the black man in America's position is parallel with that of the Jews, especially when the Jews were in bondage under Pharaoh. And at no time did Moses in the Bible ever try and integrate the Hebrews into the Egyptian society or accept any hypocritical offers made by the slave master of that day. Moses taught complete separation and a land of their own flowing with milk and honey. He didn't teach them anything about any heaven up in the sky, but the only thing that would solve their problem is a land of their own. And the black man in America is the same as the Jews were in bondage under Pharaoh. We are strangers in a land that is not ours. We are rejected by this type of modern Pharaoh or pharaonic society. And the only way that we're going to solve our problem is to do the same thing today that the Hebrews did under Pharaoh. Strike out for ourselves into a land of our own where we can build a tabernacle to our own God like the Hebrews did back there. But as long as we sit around here trying to pray to the white man's God and go to the white man's church and into the white man's school, we'll be brainwashed by the white man's educational system, and we'll continue to look down upon ourselves, and we'll continue to be a beggar to him because we'll continue to think that he's superior to us.
The political philosophy of black nationalism only means that the black man should control the politics and the politicians in his own community. The time when white people can come in our community and get us to vote for them so that they can be our political leaders and tell us what to do and what not to do is long gone. By the same token, the time when that same white man, knowing that your eyes are too far open, can send another Negro into the community, get you and me to support him so he can use him to lead us astray, those days are long gone. The political philosophy of black nationalism only means that if you and I are going to live in a black community, and that's where we're going to live, because as soon as you move into as soon as you move out of the black community into their community, it's mixed for a period of time, but they're gone, and you're right there all by yourself. We must understand the politics of our community, and we must know what politics is supposed to produce. We must know what part politics play in our lives. And until we become politically mature, we will always be misled, led astray, or deceived or maneuvered into supporting someone politically who doesn't have the good of our community at heart. So the political philosophy of black nationalism only means that we will have to carry on a political program of re-education to open our people's eyes, make us become more politically conscious, politically mature. And then we will, whenever we get ready to cast our ballot, that ballot will be cast for a man of the community who has the good of the community at heart. And the economic philosophy of black nationalism only means that we should own and operate and control the economy of our community. You would never find, you can't open up a black store in a white community. White man won't even patronize you. And he's not wrong. He got sense enough to look out for himself. And you who don't have sense enough to look out for yourself. The white man is too intelligent to let someone else come and gain control of the economy of his community. But you will let anybody come in and control the economy of your community. Control the housing, control the education, control the jobs, control the businesses under the pretext that you want to integrate. No, you're out of your mind. The economic philosophy of black nationalism only means that we have to become involved in a program of re-education to educate our people into the importance of knowing that when you spend your dollar out of the community in which you live, the community in which you spend your money becomes richer and richer. The community out of which you take your money becomes poorer and poorer. And because these Negroes who have been misled and misguided are breaking their necks to take their money and spend it with the man is becoming richer and richer, and you're becoming poorer and poorer. And then what happens? The community in which you live becomes a slum. It becomes a ghetto. The conditions become run down. And then you have the audacity to complain about poor housing in a run-down community. Why, you run it down yourself when you take your dollar out. And you and I are in a double trap, because not only do we lose by taking our money someplace else and spending it, when we try and spend it in our own community, we're trapped because we haven't had sense enough to set up stores and control the businesses of our community. The man who's controlling the stores in our community is a man who doesn't look like we do. He's a man who doesn't even live in the community. So you and I, even when we try and spend our money in the block where we live or the area where we live, we're spending it with a man who, when the sun goes down, takes that basket full of money in another part of the town. So we're trapped, double trapped, triple trapped. Anywhere we go, we find that we're trapped. And every kind of solution that someone comes up with is just another trap. But the political and economic philosophy of black nationalism, the economic philosophy of black nationalism shows our people the importance of setting up these little stores and developing them and expanding them into larger operations. Woolworth didn't start out big like they are today. They started out with a dime store and expanded and expanded and expanded until today they're all over the country and all over the world, and they're getting some of everybody's money. Now this, what you and I in General Motors, the same way, didn't start out like it is. It started out just a little rat race type operation, and it expanded and expanded until today it's where it is right now. And you and I have to make a start. And the best place to start is right in the community where we live. So our people not only have to be re-educated to the importance of supporting black business, but the black man himself has to be made aware of the importance of going into business. And once you and I go into business, we own and operate at least the businesses in our community. What we will be doing is developing a situation wherein we will actually be able to create employment for the people in the community. And once you can create some employment in the community where you live, it will eliminate the necessity of you and me having to act ignorantly and disgracefully, boycotting and picketing some cracker someplace else, trying to beg him for a job. Anytime you have to rely upon your enemy for a job, you're in bad shape. And he is your enemy. Anytime, you wouldn't be in this country if some enemy hadn't kidnapped you and brought you here. On the other hand, some of you think you came here on the Mayflower. So as you can see, brothers and sisters, today, this afternoon, it's not our intention to discuss religion. We're going to forget religion. If we bring up religion, we'll be in an argument. And the best way to keep away from arguments and differences, as I said earlier, put your religion at home, in the closet. Keep it between you and your God. Because if it hasn't done anything more for you than it has, you need to forget it anyway. Whether you are a Christian or a Muslim or a nationalist, we all have the same problem. They don't hang you because you're a Baptist, they hang you because you're black. They don't attack me because I'm a Muslim, they attack me because I'm black. They attack all of us for the same reason. All of us catch hell from the same enemy. We're all in the same bag, in the same boat. We suffer political oppression, economic exploitation, and social degradation. All of them from the same enemy. The government has failed us. You can't deny that. Anytime you live in the 20th century, 1964, and you walking around here singing, "We shall overcome," the government has failed. This is part of what's wrong with you. You do too much singing. Today it's time to stop singing and start swinging. You can't sing up on freedom, but you can swing up on some freedom. Cassius Clay can sing, but singing didn't help him to become the heavyweight champion of the world. Swinging helped him. So this government has failed us. The government itself has failed us. And the white liberals who have been posing as our friends have failed us. And once we see that all these other sources to which we've turned have failed, we stop turning to them and turn to ourselves. We need a self-help program, a do-it-yourself philosophy, a do-it-right-now philosophy. It's already too late philosophy. This is what you and I need to get with. And the only way we're going to solve our problem is with a self-help program. Before we can get a self-help program started, we have to have a self-help philosophy. Black nationalism is a self-help philosophy. What's so good about it, you can stay right in the church where you are and still take black nationalism as your philosophy. You can stay in any kind of civic organization that you belong to and still take black nationalism as your philosophy. You can be an atheist and still take black nationalism as your philosophy. This is a philosophy that eliminates the necessity for division and argument. Because if you're black, you should be thinking black. And if you're black and you're not thinking black at this late date, well, I'm sorry for you.
This type has blind faith in your religion. He's not interested in any religion of his own. He believes in a white Jesus, white Mary, white angels, and he's trying to get to a white heaven. When you listen to him in his church sing, he sings a song, I think they call it, "Wash Me White as Snow." He wants to be turned white so he can go to heaven with a white man. It's not his fault. It's actually not his fault. But this is the state of his mind. This is the result of 400 years of brainwashing here in America. You have taken a man who is black on the outside and made him white on the inside. His brain is white as snow. His heart is white as snow. And therefore, whenever you say this is ours, he thinks he's white the same as you. So what's yours, he thinks it's also his. Even right on down to your woman. Now, many of them will take offense at my implying that he wants your woman. They'll say, no, this is what Bilbo and Talmadge and all of the white citizens' councils say. They say that to fool you. If this is not what they want, watch them. And if you find evidence to the contrary, then I'll take back my word. But all you have to do is give him a chance to get near you. And you'll find that he is not satisfied until he's sitting next to your woman or closer to her than that. So, what the Honorable, in this type of Negro, usually he hates black and loves white. He doesn't want to be black. He wants to be white. And he'll get on his bended knees and beg you for integration, which means he would rather rather than live with his own kind who love him, he'll force himself to live in neighborhoods around white people whom he knows don't mean him any good. And again I say, this is not his fault. He is sick. And as long as America listens to this sick Negro who is begging to be integrated into the American society, despite the fact that the attitude and actions of whites are sufficient proof that he is not wanted, why then you are actually allowing him to force you into a position where you look just as sick as he looks. If someone holds a gun on a white man and makes him embrace me, put his arm around me, this isn't love, nor is it brotherhood. What they're doing is forcing the white man to be a hypocrite, to practice hypocrisy. But if that white man will put his arm around me willingly, voluntarily, of his own volition, then that's love, that's brotherhood, that's a solution to the problem. Likewise, as long as the government has to get out here and legislate to force Negroes into a white neighborhood, or force Negroes into a white school, or force Negroes into white industry, and make white people pretend that they go for this, all the government is doing is making white people be hypocrites. And rather than be classified as a bigot by putting a block, the average white person actually would rather put up a hypocritical face, the face of a hypocrite, than to tell the black man, no, you stay over there and let me stay over here. So that's no solution. As long as you force people to act in a hypocritical way, you'll never solve that problem. It has to be, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that a solution has to be devised that'll be satisfactory, completely satisfactory to the black man and completely satisfactory to the white man. And the only thing that makes white people completely satisfied and black people completely satisfied when they're in their right mind is when the black man has his own and the white man has his own. You have what you need, we have what we need. And then both of us have something, and even the Bible says, God bless the child that has his own. And the poor so-called Negro doesn't have his own name, doesn't have his own language, doesn't have his own culture, doesn't have his own history, he doesn't have his own country, he doesn't even have his own mind. And he thinks that he's black because God cursed him. He's not black because God cursed him. He's black because, rather he's cursed because he's out of his mind. He has lost his mind. He has a white mind instead of the type of mind that he should have. So when these so-called Negroes who want integration try and force themselves into the white society, which doesn't solve the problem, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that that type of Negro is the one that creates the problem. And the type of white person who perpetuates the problem is the one who poses as a liberal and pretends that the Negro should be integrated, and as long as he integrates someone else's neighborhood. But all these whites that you see running around here talking about how liberal they are and we believe everybody should have what they want and go where they want and do what they want, as soon as a Negro moves into that white liberal's neighborhood, that white liberal he moves out faster than the white bigot from Mississippi, Alabama, and from someplace else. So we won't solve the problem listening to that Uncle Tom Negro, and the problem won't be solved listening to this so-called white liberal. The only time the problem is going to be solved is when a black man can sit down like a black man and a white man can sit down like a white man and make no excuses whatsoever with each other in discussing the problem. No offense will stem from factors that are brought up, but both of them have to sit down like men, on one side and on the other side, and look at it in terms of black and white, and then take some kind of solution based upon the factors that we see rather than upon that which we would like to believe. And when I say that this Negro wants to force his way into the white man's family, this integrationist-minded Negro wants to force his way into the white man's family, some don't believe that. Some take issue with that. But you take all of the integrationists, all of the those who are used to finance the program of the integrationists, the average so-called Negro celebrity, put all of them in one pot. And as fast as you name them off, you'll find that every one of them is married either to a white woman or a white man. From Lena Horne, Eartha Kitt, Sammy Davis, and you could name them all night long. Although they say that this is not what we want, that's what they've done. That's what they have. And we don't, the black masses don't want what Lena Horne wants, or what Sammy Davis wants, or what, who's his name, the rest of them want. Usually you'll find that before Sammy Davis and Lena Horne and Eartha Kitt and Harry Belafonte become involved in a mixed marriage, you could go into the Negro community, anyone across the country, and find those stars with records on the jukeboxes in the Negro community. You can't walk into a Negro community today and find anybody that the Negro community knows is involved in a mixed marriage with their records being popular in the Negro community, subconsciously. A Negro doesn't have any respect or regard or confidence, or nor can he be moved by a black man who marries a white woman, or a black woman who marries a white man. And when they put out that picture to you that all of us want your woman, no, just that 20th-century Uncle Tom. He wants her. And then when you think you're going to solve your problem by pleasing him, you're only making the problem worse. You have to go back and listen to the problem as it is for the black people, not by these hand-picked handful of Uncle Toms who benefit from token integration. Also, this type of so-called Negro, by being intoxicated over the white man, he never sees beyond the white man. He never sees beyond America. He never looks at himself or where he fits into things on the world stage. He only can see himself here in America, on the American stage or the white stage, where the white man is in the majority, where the white man is the boss. So this type of Negro always feels like he's outnumbered, or he's the underdog, or he's the minority. And it puts him in the role of a beggar, cowardly, humble, Uncle Tom and beggar on anything that he says is that should be his by right. Whereas there is, when it comes, he wants to be an American rather than to be black. He wants to be something other than what he is. And knowing that America is a white country, he knows he can't be black and be an American too. So he never calls himself black. He calls himself an American Negro, a Negro in America. And usually he'll deny his own race, his own color, just to be a second-class American. He'll deny his own history, his own culture. He'll deny all of his brothers and sisters in Africa, in Asia, in the East, just to be a second-class American. He denies everything that he represents, or that everything that was in his past, just to be accepted into a country and into a government that has rejected him ever since he was brought here. Well, this Negro is sick. He has to be sick to try and force himself among some people who don't want him, or to be accepted into a government that has used its entire political system and educational system to keep him relegated to the role of a second-class citizen. And therefore, he spends a lifetime begging for acceptance into the same government that made slaves of his people. He gives his life for a country that made his people slaves and still confines them to the role of second-class citizens. And we feel that he wastes his time begging white politicians, political hypocrites, for civil rights or for some kind of first-class citizenship. He's like a watchdog or a hound dog. You may run into a dog. No matter how vicious a dog is, you find him out in the street, he won't bite you. But when you get him up on the porch, he will growl. He'll take your leg. Now that dog, when he's out in the street, only his own life is threatened. And he's never been trained to protect himself. He's only been trained by his master to think in terms of what's good for his master. So when you catch him in the street and you threaten him, he'll go around you. But when you come up through the gate when he's sitting on the master's porch, then he'll bare his fangs and get ready to bite you. Not because you're threatening him, but because you're threatening his master, who has trained him not to protect himself, but to protect the property of the master. And this type of 20th century Uncle Tom is the same way. He'll never attack you, but he'll attack me. I can run into him out in the street and blast him. He won't say a word. But if I look like I'm about to blast you in here, he'll open up his mouth and put up a better defense for you than you can put up for yourself. Because he hasn't been trained to defend himself. He has only been trained to open up his mouth in defense of his master. He hasn't been educated, he's been trained. When a man is educated, he can think for himself and defend himself and speak for himself. But this 20th century Uncle Tom Negro never opens up his mouth in defense of a black man. He opens up his mouth in defense of the white man, in defense of America, in defense of the American government. He doesn't even know where his government is because he doesn't know that he ever had one. He doesn't know where his country is because he doesn't know that he ever had one. He believes in exactly what he was taught in school, that when he was kidnapped by the white man, he was a savage in the jungle someplace, eating people and throwing spears and with a bone in his nose. And the average American Negro has that concept of the African continent. It is not his fault. This is what has been given to him by the American educational system. He doesn't realize that there were civilizations and cultures on the African continent at a time when the people in Europe were crawling around in the caves going naked. He doesn't realize that the black man in Africa was wearing silk, was wearing slippers that he was able to spin himself, make himself, at a time when the people up in Europe were going naked. He doesn't realize that he was living in palaces on the African continent when the people in Europe were living in caves. He doesn't realize that he was living in a civilization in Africa where science had been so far advanced, especially even the astronomical sciences, to a point where Africans could plot the course of the stars in the universe when the people up in Europe still thought the earth was round, the planet was round or flat. He doesn't realize the advancement and the high state of his own culture that he was living in before he was kidnapped and brought to this country by the white man. He knows nothing about that. He knows nothing about the ancient Egyptian civilization on the African continent, or the ancient Carthaginian civilization on the African continent, or the ancient civilizations of Mali on the African continent, civilizations that were highly developed and produced scientists. Timbuktu, the center of the Mali Empire, was the center of learning at a time when the people up in Europe didn't even know what a book was. He doesn't know this because he hasn't been taught. And because he doesn't know this, when you mention Africa to him, well, he thinks you're talking about a jungle. And I went to Africa in 1959 and didn't see any jungle and didn't see any mud huts until I got back to Harlem in New York City. So you're familiar with that type of Negro. And the black man that you're not familiar with is the one that we would like to point out now. He is the new type. He's the type that seldom the white man ever comes in contact with. And when you do come in contact with him, you're shocked because you didn't know that this type of black man existed. And immediately you think, well, here's one of those black supremacists or racists or extremists who believe in violence and all that old kind of, well, that's what they call it. This new type of black, he doesn't want integration. He wants separation. Not segregation, separation. To him, segregation, as we're taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, means that which is forced upon inferiors by superiors. A segregated community is a Negro community. But the white community, though it's all white, it's never called a segregated community. It's a separate community. In the white community, the white man controls the economy, his own politics, his own everything. That's his community. But at the same time, all the Negro lives in a separate community. It's a segregated community, which means it's regulated from the outside by outsiders. The white man has all of the businesses in the Negro community. He runs the politics of the Negro community. He controls all the civic organizations in the Negro community. This is a segregated community. We don't go for segregation. We go for separation. Separation is when you have your own. You control your own economy. You control your own politics. You control your own society. You control your own everything. You have yours and you control yours. We have ours and we control ours. They don't call Chinatown in New York City or on the West Coast a segregated community. Yet it's all Chinese. But the Chinese control it. Chinese voluntarily live there. They control it. They run it. They have their own schools. They control their own politics, control their own industry. And they don't feel like they're being made inferior because they have to live to themselves. They choose to live to themselves. They live there voluntarily. And they are doing for themselves in their community the same thing you do for yourself in your community. This makes them equal because they have what you have. But if they didn't have what you have, then they'd be controlled from your side, even though they would be on their side. They'd be controlled from your side by you. So when we who follow the Honorable Elijah Muhammad say that we're for separation, it should be emphasized. We're not for segregation. We're for separation. We want the same for ourselves as you have for yourself. And when we get it, then it's possible to think more intelligently and to think in terms that are along peaceful lines. But a man who doesn't have what is his, he can never think always in terms that are along peaceful lines. This new type rejects the white man's Christian religion. He recognizes the real enemy. That Uncle Tom can't see his enemy. He thinks his friend is his enemy and his enemy is his friend. And he usually ends up loving his enemy, turning his other cheek to his enemy. But this new type, he doesn't turn the other cheek to anybody. He doesn't believe in any kind of peaceful suffering. He believes in obeying the law. He believes in respecting people. He believes in doing unto others as he would have done unto himself. But at the same time, if anybody attacks him, he believes in retaliating if it costs him his life. And it is good for white people to know this. Because if white people get the impression that Negroes all endorse this old turn the other cheek cowardly philosophy of Dr. Martin Luther King, then whites are going to make the mistake of putting their hands on some black man thinking that he's going to turn the other cheek and he'll end up losing his hand and losing his life in the trial. So it is always better to let someone know where you stand. And there are a large number of black people in this country who don't endorse anything of what Dr. Martin Luther King and these other 20th century religious Uncle Toms are putting in front of the public eye to make it look like this is the way, this is the behavior, or this is the thought pattern of most of our people. Also, this new type, you'll find, he doesn't look upon it as being any honor to be in America. He knows he didn't come here on the Mayflower. He knows he was brought here in a slave ship. But this 20th century Uncle Tom, he'll stand up in your face and tell you about when his fathers landed on Plymouth Rock. His father never landed on Plymouth Rock. The rock was dropped on him, but it wasn't dropped on him. So this type doesn't make any apology for being in America, nor does he make any apology for the problem his presence in America presents for Uncle Sam. He knows he was brought here in chains, and he knows he was brought here against his will. He knows that the problem itself was created by the white man, and that it was created because the white man brought us here in chains against our will. It was a crime. And the one who committed that crime is the criminal today who should pay for the crime that was committed. You don't put the crime in jail. You put the criminal in jail. And kidnapping is a crime. Slavery is a crime. Lynching is a crime. And the presence of 20 million black people in America against their will is a living witness or living testimony of the crime that Uncle Sam committed, your forefathers committed when our people were brought here in chains. And the reason the problem can't be solved today is you try and dress it up and doctor it up and make it look like a favor was done to the black man by having brought the black man here. But when you realize that it was a crime that was committed, then you approach the solution to that problem in a different light, and then you can probably solve it. And as long as you think Negroes are running around here of the opinion that you're doing them a favor by letting them have some of this and letting them have some of that, why naturally, every time you give a little bit more justice or freedom to the black man, you stick out your chest and say, see, we're solving the problem. You're not doing the black man any favor. If you stick a knife in my back, if you pull it in 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, you haven't done me any favor. If you pull it all the way out, you haven't done me any favor. And this is what you have to realize. If you put a man in jail against his will, illegally, he's not guilty, you frame him up. And then because he resents what you've done to him, you put him in solitary confinement to break his spirit, after his spirit is broken, you let him out a little bit and give him the general run of the prison, you haven't done him any favor. If you let him out of prison completely, you haven't done him any favor because you put him in there unjustly and illegally in the first place. Now, you have 20 million black people in this country who were brought here and put in a political, economic, and mental prison. This was done by Uncle Sam. And today you don't realize what a crime your forefathers had committed. And you think that when you open the door a few cracks and give this little integration, an intoxicated Negro, a chance to run around in the prison yard, that's all he's doing, that you're doing him a favor. But as long as he has to look up to someone who doesn't represent him and who doesn't speak for him, that person only represents the warden. It doesn't represent some kind of president or mayor or governor or senator or congressman or anything else. So this new type, the fact has to be faced that he exists, especially since he's in the house. And he didn't come here against his will, so you have to take the blame for his being here. And once you take the blame, then it's easier for you to approach the problem more sensibly and try and get a solution. And the solution can never be based upon hypocrisy. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that this solution has to be based upon reality. Tokenism is hypocrisy. One little student in the University of Mississippi, that's hypocrisy. A handful of students in Little Rock, Arkansas, is hypocrisy. A couple students going to school in Georgia is hypocrisy. Integration in America is hypocrisy in the rawest form, and the whole world can see it. All this little tokenism that is dangled in front of the Negro, and then he's told, see what we're doing for you, Tom. Why, the whole world can see that this is nothing but hypocrisy, and all you do is make your image worse. You don't make it better. So again, this new type, as I say, he rejects the white man's Christian religion. You find in large numbers they're turning toward the religion of Islam. They're becoming Muslims, believing in one God whose proper name is Allah, and Muhammad as his apostle, and turning toward Mecca, praying 5 times a day, fasting during Ramadan, and all of the other principles that are laid out by the religion of Islam. He's becoming a Muslim, and just as I think it was Dr. Billy Graham who made a crusade through Africa and came back and said that Islam is sweeping through Africa, outnumbering Christianity in converts 11-1, which means every time one African becomes a Christian, 11 of them become a Muslim. And then that one who became a Christian, he forgets it and is going on to be a Muslim too. And Bishop Pike pointed out the same thing in Look magazine in December 1960, and then Time magazine. Heaven forbid that I should mention that magazine, but Time magazine. Many different ways to understand politics. Number one, we're not a political group. We're not politically inclined, motivated, nor are our political aims in any way connected with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But when you study the science of politics, or study it as it's practiced in the UN at the international level, you'll find usually on questions you have those who say yes, those who say no, and those who don't say anything. Those who don't say anything usually are the neutralists. And by abstaining, they have just as much political power, if not more so, than those who take an active part in all situations. Where the Negro in America is concerned, he's been without the ballot so long. Today, when he gets the ballot, he's ballot happy. He's like a man to whom you give a gun, he just starts shooting to let everybody know he's got a gun. He doesn't aim at anything. Well, we believe in shooting too, but we first believe that we should have a target, and then when that target gets within our reach, then we'll put the bullet where it belongs, or the ballot where it belongs, or whatever you call it, where it belongs. But we don't see at this point where the black man gains anything in politics. Let me just give you an example. And in the last presidential election, whites were evenly divided between Kennedy and Nixon. It was the Negro who went for Kennedy, 80%, that put Kennedy in the White House. And they went for him based upon the promises, false promises, by the way, that he made. Well, facts are facts. He said I think everybody has a right to his opinion. And I'm quite certain those who are familiar with Kennedy's promises to the Negro know what he said he could do with the stroke of his pen. And he was in office for 2 years before he found where his fountain pen was, where the Negro was concerned. And the excuse that he used was that he first had to change the attitude of Southern segregationists. Now, he didn't tell you that when he asked you to vote for him. But once he got in, then he had to tell you what problems he was facing. And he didn't want to take a stand against the Southern segregationists. But he did take a stand against U.S. Steel, which is the strongest corporation on this earth. He threw down the gauntlet. He threw down the gauntlet to Cuba. He has thrown down the gauntlet to anybody he's desired. But when it comes to the Negro, he's always got an alibi that puts him off until a little while later. So this is why we don't believe in any white politicians or anything like that can solve our problem. We'll get together among ourselves with these students who go to these colleges and get equipped and solve the problem for ourselves. I think that you'll find that the Negro leadership across the country classified the ultimate document that he signed as something absolutely worthless insofar as the housing conditions for Negroes. Just another political trick. Whenever you send 15,000 troops and spend $6 or $7 million just to put one Negro in the midst of some yapping wolves, you haven't done that Negro nor the masses of black people any favor, nor have you solved the problem. If it's legal and just and right for Meredith to be at the University of Mississippi, according to Robert Kennedy, the Attorney General, and all of the others, then every other black man in Mississippi has just as much right to be there. So if you're going to spend all that money and all that manpower putting one in there, why not just go in and take the criminals who are responsible for keeping the masses out and taking them down off their posts and then opening the doors to everybody? That would be a solution, but they're not going to do that. They always want to use methods that put one Negro at a time. And then they use him to turn around and tell the masses, you see, we're solving the problem, and the problem is still unsolved.